The blazing Lagos sun beat down mercilessly on Amaka as she sat by the roadside, her back against the concrete wall of Ojuelegba Bridge. Her hair was unkempt, her once bright anchor blouse now faded and torn. The world around her moved in a blur. Danfo buses honking, hawkers shouting prices, children weaving through traffic to sell gala and bottled drinks. Yet in all this noise, Amaka felt utterly invisible. Only months ago, her life had been full of promise. A second-year law student, she had been her father's pride and her mother's joy. But tragedy struck like lightning. Her father died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving behind debt she never knew existed. Her uncle seized the family house under the guise of tradition, and her mother's fragile health gave way under the weight of grief. Within weeks, Amaka had lost both parents, her education, and her home. She now carried only a small nylon bag filled with old notebooks and her father's Bible, the last reminders of a life stolen from her. Hunger gnawed at her belly, but her pride was even sharper. She refused to beg, even as her legs trembled with weakness. That evening, as she watched cars sweep past her without notice, she whispered into the smoky air, "God, if you see me, please, don't let this be the end." Amaka decided to seek refuge in the homes of her old friends. Surely, the girls she had once studied and laughed with would help her now. She started with Ngozi, her best friend from university. The moment Ngozi opened the door, her eyes widened in shock. Amaka explained everything, her voice trembling. But before she could finish, Ngozi cut her short. "Amaka, please, I can't. I'm married now. My husband won't allow it. You know how Lagos men are." She shut the door, leaving Amaka in tears. Undeterred, she tried Kaioma, another close friend. Kaioma stood in her doorway, perfectly dressed in a corporate skirt suit. She looked Amaka up and down, her expression twisted with disgust. "Look at you. You're nothing but bad luck now. Carry your misery elsewhere." She hissed and slammed the door. Amaka staggered back, her heart shattering. Betrayal burned hotter than hunger. She had celebrated their wins, shared her last meal with them, and dreamed of their futures together. Now, in her hour of need, they treated her like a curse. That night, she walked aimlessly through Soyole, tears mingling with sweat on her cheeks. The city lights blurred in her vision. The weight of rejection pressed her to the ground, but her spirit, though bruised, refused to snap. Still, she wondered, how much longer could she hold on? The next evening, determined to earn a little money, Amaka borrowed a tray of sachet water from a woman who trusted her. She balanced it on her head and entered Ojuelegba's night market, where the smell of roasted suya filled the air and conductors shouted their destinations. CMS, CMS straight. Lekki, Lekki. At first, business was slow, but soon a group of rowdy touts approached. One grabbed a sachet and drank, then laughed, refusing to pay. "See this one we look like rag. Wetting you fit do." Another shoved her tray, sending sachets tumbling into the mud. The crowd laughed as Amaka scrambled to pick them up, tears stinging her eyes. She begged them to stop, but their laughter grew louder. And then, silence. A sleek black SUV pulled up nearby. Its tinted window rolled down just enough. Amaka didn't notice at first, but a pair of sharp, observing eyes were locked on her. The man inside, billionaire tycoon Chidi Okafor, watched with interest. He was known in boardrooms as a cold strategist, but something in Amaka's humiliation stirred him. Her refusal to bow completely, the way she still clutched the few sachets left with trembling dignity, it intrigued him. As the touts dispersed, Amaka fled into the night, her heart aching. She had no idea her pain had already drawn the attention of a man who could change her destiny. Chidi Okafor stepped out of the SUV, tall and commanding, his face partially hidden by the shadows of Lagos streetlights. He didn't approach Amaka immediately. He watched her retreating figure, the slump of her shoulders, the way she tried to hide her tears. Something about her stirred memories of his own difficult childhood, the nights he too had gone to bed hungry before fortune smiled on him. When he finally approached, Amaka was sitting by a wall, staring blankly at her ruined sachets. He extended a folded bundle of Naira notes. "Hey," he said in a voice smooth but firm. Amaka's pride bristled. "I don't need pity," she said bitterly, refusing to look at him. Most people mocked her, But this stranger's gaze unsettled her. It wasn't pity she saw there. It was something deeper, almost respect. Chidi quietly placed the money in her tray and walked away, his polished shoes clicking against the concrete. Amaka stared at his retreating figure, her heart racing. Who was he? And why did his eyes feel like they could see past the misery? That night, Amaka curled up under Surya Bridge, her tray beside her. The ground was hard, the air damp with the smell of urine and smoke. She unfolded the money he left, far more than she had lost. She could eat for days, maybe even save a little, but it wasn't the money that haunted her. It was him. She replayed the encounter endlessly. His voice, his eyes, the quiet authority in the way he walked away. Most men who noticed her on the streets did so with lust or mockery. But this man, a stranger, had looked at her like she still mattered. As the first buses rumbled awake at dawn, Amaka whispered a prayer. Maybe my life can change. She didn't know it yet, but Chidi had already made a decision. The girl with a torn blouse and unbroken spirit would not remain invisible. Days passed, and though Chidi's gesture had eased Amaka's hunger, it could not solve her larger problem, survival. She needed steady work. Swallowing her pride, she heard of an opening for office cleaners at a major corporation in Victoria Island. She borrowed a clean blouse from a sympathetic market woman, ironed it on a charcoal stove, and set out with trembling hope. The building was majestic, glass walls reflecting Lagos sun, polished marble floors, security men in crisp uniforms. Amaka felt small, almost swallowed by its grandeur. Inside, the receptionist looked her over, sneering. Cleaner interview? Sit there, if they even take you. Whispering voices followed her. Other applicants with neater clothes eyed her torn shoes and scoffed. When her turn came, she entered the interview room, clutching her CV written on cheap paper. The painless exchanged glances, unimpressed. One muttered loudly, another one of those street girls. Amaka answered each question honestly, her voice steady, but she could feel rejection hanging in the air. She left the room with her head bowed, certain she had failed. What she didn't know was that the building belonged to Chidi Okafor himself. And fate was not finished weaving their paths together. As Amaka waited in the reception, trying to fight back tears, a sudden hush fell over the hall. The elevator doors opened, and out stepped a tall man in a tailored navy blue suit, Chidi Okafor. His presence commanded the room instantly. Employees stood straighter, whispering, "Olga has arrived." Amaka froze. It was him, the stranger from the night market. Her heart pounded as Chidi's gaze swept across the lobby and landed on her. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Slowly, he walked toward her, ignoring greeting from staff. "You," he said softly, a spark of surprise in his voice. The receptionist panicked. "Sir, she's here for cleaner interview," but Chidi raised a hand, silencing her. "Make sure she is considered properly." His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. The entire office buzzed with confusion. Why would the billionaire CEO care about this shabby girl? Amaka's chest tightened. She didn't know whether to be grateful or embarrassed. All she knew was that her life had just taken another unexpected turn. Amaka was hired as a cleaner, though whispers followed her everywhere. The other staff mocked her, calling her Olga's charity case. She ignored them, focusing on her duties. Every evening, she lingered in the empty boardroom, wiping tables slowly, stealing glances at documents left behind. Her sharp mind absorbed terms she once studied in law school: mergers, contracts, equity. One night, she entered Chidi's office to dust and notice files scattered wrongly. She carefully arranged them in order, guided by instinct. The next morning, Chidi walked in, surprised. "Who did this?" he asked the secretary. When told it was a cleaner girl, his curiosity deepened. Later, he called Amaka in. Nervous, she clutched her mop handle. "Why did you arrange these?" he asked. She stammered. "They were mixed up. I just thought it would be better this way." Her reasoning was sound, almost professional. For the first time, Chidi saw beyond her tattered clothes. He saw a brilliant mind suffocating under poverty. That night, Amaka returned to her corner of Surya Bridge with a strange feeling. For the first time in months, she didn't feel invisible. Chidi was not a man who acted on impulse. But Amaka's quiet intelligence unsettled him in ways he couldn't explain. He decided to test her further. One afternoon, he summoned her into his office. She stood nervously, expecting scolding. Instead, he asked, "Have you eaten today?" Shocked, she muttered, "No, sir." Without another word, he handed her an invitation. "Join me for dinner tonight." Word spread quickly through the company. A cleaner, dining with a billionaire. The gossip was vicious. Some said she must have used charm. Others whispered she was just another fling. Amaka almost refused. Shame burned her. What would she even wear? But hunger gnawed, and curiosity whispered. Against her fears, she accepted. That evening, she borrowed a modest gown from a kind colleague and arrived at the restaurant. The chandeliers sparkled, violin played softly, and wealthy guests turned to stare as she entered with trembling steps. Chidi rose to greet her, his gaze calm but watchful. "Sit," he said. For the first time in a long while, Amaka felt like someone, not something. Dinner began awkwardly. Amaka barely touched the food, too aware of the stares around them. Chidi, however, was patient, asking her questions. "What were your dreams before life happened?" Her eyes softened as she spoke of her father, of her love for law, of the betrayal that left her broken. She didn't embellish. She spoke raw truth. Chidi listened intently, more moved than he expected. For a man who dined with senators and tycoons, it was rare to hear such honesty. Then came the shock. As dessert was served, Chidi leaned forward. "Amaka," he said slowly, "be my wife." The glass nearly slipped from her hand. She stared at him, wide-eyed, thinking it a cool joke. "Me? A street girl? Your wife?" she whispered, her voice shaking. But Chidi's face was unreadable, serious. "Yes, I don't need perfection. I need truth. And you have it." Amaka's heart pounded. Her mind screamed this was madness. Yet deep down, a flicker of hope, dangerous and irresistible, stirred to life. Amaka's mind raced after Chidi's shocking proposal. She couldn't sleep that night, tossing on the hard mat she spread under Surya Bridge. Marriage? To a billionaire? It sounded like a cool prank life was playing on her. But Chidi was serious. The next day at work, he called her again, calm but firm. "I do not make jokes with marriage." Amaka tried to protest. "Sir, I am not your kind. People will laugh at you. At me. I have nothing to offer." But Chidi's gaze was steady. "You have more dignity in your little finger than many in my circle. I don't care what people say." She hesitated, torn between fear and the faint hope of a new life. Days later, after endless sleepless nights, she whispered yes. Not because she wanted luxury, but because she was tired of misery. If fate was giving her a chance, she couldn't refuse. The announcement hit Lagos like wildfire. Billionaire Chidi Okafor to marry unknown cleaner girl. Blogs went wild. Gossip channels debated endlessly. She must be pregnant, some claimed. Others sneered, witchcraft, maybe. On the wedding day, cameras flashed nonstop. The venue was a 5-star hotel dripping in gold, the kind Amaka had only seen in magazines. She wore a dazzling white lace gown, her hair adorned with pearls, but beneath the veil her hands trembled. Everywhere, eyes judged her. Guests whispered behind fans and wine glasses, their laughter mocking. Chidi, however, stood tall, his grip on her hand firm as though shielding her from the world. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Chidi kissed her forehead gently. For a moment, the world melted away. Amaka wasn't a cleaner or a beggar. She was a bride. The fairy tale glow didn't last long. After the wedding, the backlash was brutal. Socialites scoffed openly, trashing diamonds. Newspapers ran insulting headlines. At a business brunch, Chidi's own mother refused to sit near Amaka, her face icy with disapproval. One night, Amaka overheard wealthy women laughing about her. "She can't even hold cutlery properly. Look at her pretending to be one of us." The words pierced her heart. Alone in her room, she tore off a jewel, sobbing uncontrollably. For the first time since marrying Chidi, she regretted saying yes. When Chidi entered and found her crying, she tried to hide it, but he lifted her chin gently. "Do not let them break you," he said firmly. You are my wife. That is enough. His words soothed her, but deep down, she knew she had to prove herself. The turning point came during a high society gala. One of Chidi's business rivals, Chief Ease, deliberately tried to humiliate Amaka. He asked her a difficult question about international trade laws, expecting her to stutter. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But Amaka, remembering her law studies, answered calmly and intelligently, shocking everyone. Chief Ease smirked, so the street girl can talk. Before Amaka could reply, Chidi stood, his voice commanding. She is not a street girl. She is my wife, and she is more woman than many of you will ever know. The whole went silent. For the first time, Amaka felt truly defended, not pitied. That night, as they drove home, she leaned against Chidi's shoulder, a quiet smile on her lips. He had shown the world, and her, that she mattered. Amaka knew she could no longer hide behind Chidi's shadow. If society would respect her, she had to transform herself. She began etiquette lessons, business coaching, and personal development training. At first, it was humiliating, tripping over heels, fumbling with forks, struggling with English pronunciations. People mocked her progress online, but Amaka was determined. Each night, she practiced in front of a mirror, reading aloud from newspapers, memorizing business terms. Slowly, she blossomed. Within months, she could carry herself with grace, her natural intelligence shining through. At a charity ball, she arrived in a stunning anchor-inspired gown, her poise so commanding that whispers turned from ridicule to admiration. "Is this the same girl?" guests murmured. For the first time, people bowed slightly as she passed. Amaka had begun her transformation, no longer the beggar on the bridge, but a woman rising from ashes into a queen. Amaka's rise unsettled many, but none more than Chidi's cousin, Obinna. Ambitious and jealous, he believed Amaka was ruining the family's reputation. He whispered to business partners that she was unworthy, plotting her downfall in shadows. One night, an explosive blog post appeared online. Billionaire's bride wants a street prostitute, accompanied by fake pictures and fabricated stories. Within hours, it trended across Nigeria. Hashtags mocked her, memes ridiculed her. Amaka woke up to a storm she never imagined. Paparazzi camped outside their mansion. Journalists shouted cruel questions whenever she stepped out. Inside, Chidi fumed, threatening lawsuits. But Amaka sat quietly, devastated. Though she knew the story was false, the shame weighed heavy. Was this the price of marrying him? She wondered. Misery returned like a ghost, threatening to choke her all over again. Instead of hiding, Amaka decided to face the storm head-on. She called for a press conference. On the day, reporters filled the hall, eager for scandal. She stepped up to the podium, dressed simply an anchor, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each word. "I was never a prostitute," she declared. "I was a girl who lost everything. My father, my home, my dreams. I sold water on the streets to survive. I slept under bridges. I was mocked, spat on, abandoned. But I never sold my body. What I sold was my strength and dignity to keep going." Tears streamed down her face, but she did not waver. "If you call that shameful, then shame on those who mocked me. Not me." The whole fell silent. Even the harshest journalists found themselves moved. Within hours, the same social media that mocked her began to hail her courage. The narrative shifted. Amaka was no longer a victim of scandal, but a symbol of survival. Chidi had always admired Amaka's spirit, but after the press conference, his respect deepened. He invited her to sit beside him at a major business negotiation, shocking his executives. "She doesn't belong here," one whispered. But when discussions grew tense over a multimillion-dollar oil deal, Amaka quietly pointed out a loophole in the contract, something even seasoned lawyers had missed. Her calm explanation saved Chidi's company from a disastrous trap. For the first time, the room fell silent in respect. Chidi turned to her with pride in his eyes. "Gentlemen," he said, "this is not just my wife. She is my partner." From that day, Amaka was no longer dismissed as a charity bride. She was a force in her own right, a woman whose voice commanded boardrooms and whose past gave her strength no money could buy. Amaka refused to let her story end with her own success. She began visiting the very streets where she once slept, this time not as a beggar but as a helper. She launched a foundation for homeless children, providing food, shelter, and education. Cameras captured a powerful image, Amaka, in an elegant gown, kneeling under the same Surulere bridge where she once cried herself to sleep, hugging a group of ragged children. The photo went viral with the caption, "From misery to majesty." People who once mocked her now praised her. Talk shows invited her. Schools asked her to speak. Young girls called her an inspiration. The same city that had turned its back on her now celebrated her as a queen of resilience. A year later, at their anniversary gala, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and diamonds. Guests who once scorned Amaka now bowed respectfully as she entered, her head held high. But the most powerful moment came when Chidi, billionaire tycoon, stood before everyone, took the microphone, and dropped to one knee. He looked at her with tears in his eyes. "Amaka, when I first saw you, you were broken but unbent. You taught me that true wealth is not in money or power, but in dignity, courage, and love. Today, before everyone, I kneel not as a billionaire, but as a man forever grateful that you became my wife." The hall erupted in applause. Amaka's eyes filled with tears as she pulled him up and whispered, "And you taught me that misery is never permanent. Only love is." That night, as cameras flashed and the world watched, Amaka realized the journey had come full circle. From a forgotten girl under a bridge to a woman crowned not with jewels, but with respect, love, and destiny. Her misery had looked permanent, but fate and love had made her a bride, a queen, and an eternal inspiration.